The Biden administration is saying they are not going to be negotiating with Republicans. Why should they? They say that whatever they want in terms of a budget and a debt limit and endless spending for endless reasons should be theirs. Here's Karine Jean-Pierre explaining that when asked about it.
If the Republicans in the House do present a plan for conditions for what they would raise the debt limit under, will you start negotiations with them on that plan? What would be the point of them presenting you with a list of demands?
Well, what I'm saying is they want to cut, but they're just saying this rhetoric that's incredibly dangerous, that is very dangerous to the full credit and of our country, right? You think about the debt ceiling, you think about the debt limit. We're talking about debt that has been racked up by Congress, right? But we continue to say this should be done when it comes to the debt limit, the debt ceiling, it should be done without condition. That doesn't change
without
anything.
any conditions.
I'm just laying out how they're proceeding here. It's such in a reckless way. And so we're
by asking for less spending and to stop spending money that the country doesn't have.
just calling that out, but it doesn't change where we stand. It doesn't change the fact that we are not going to negotiate here.
Wow.
This is something that should be dealt with, like it
We're
has
not
been
negotiating.
many times before. In the last administration, three times.
Do you hear that?
This should be done when it comes to the debt limit, the debt ceiling. It should be done without condition. That doesn't change anything. I'm just laying out how they're proceeding here. It's such in a reckless way. And so we're just calling that out. But it doesn't change where we stand. It doesn't change the fact that we are not going to negotiate here.
We are not going to negotiate here. Well, guess what? Rand Paul doesn't buy that for a minute. He says, you sure will, my friend. Here is what he said.
President Biden says he won't negotiate over raising the debt ceiling. I have news for him. He absolutely will negotiate. Conservatives will not vote to raise the debt ceiling. The majority in the House, Republican majority in the House, will not vote to raise the debt ceiling without significant budget reform. The greatest threat to our country is, and the greatest threat to our national security is the debt. One of the great things about where we are now, though, is it really doesn't take as much as you would think to actually balance the budget. In Europe, over half of the countries balance their annual budget. We think of Europe, of Germany and Sweden, of having these large governments, and they do, but they're actually fiscally responsible in the sense that they spend what comes in. We could do it in our country.
Yeah.
If we were to have a $100 billion cut, which would still have us spending way more than we spent before COVID, a $100 billion cut and free spending, we would balance our budget in just 4 years.
4 years.
This is amazing. We have an opportunity here. It could be done, but it would take compromise between both parties. Republicans would have to give up the sacred cow that says we will never touch a dollar in military.
Oh, great.
And the Democrats would have to give up the sacred cow that they will never touch a dollar in welfare. Everything would have to be looked across the board. No one has a sacred area that would be immune. And when you make the cuts across the board, they aren't as big as you'd actually think they would be. It's a responsible thing to do, but President Biden needs to know, absolutely, he will negotiate, and it's better to start now.
Yeah, buddy boy Biden, you better get ready for some negotiation. Here's a letter that came in from the Republicans. They're very unhappy about this as well. Here's what they said. January 27th, from the United States Senate in Washington, D.C., the letter goes over to the Honorable Joe Biden at the White House. They say, Dear President Biden, and you're wondering who's drafting this. It's a bunch of these senators, and some of these people you'll remember. Some names you can tease out of here. It looks like Joni Ernst. We've got Rand Paul's right here, Mike Braun, so on and so forth. See if you can tease out some of these other names. But here's what they said to the president. They write, all right, dear Joe Biden, President. They say, we, the undersigned members of the Senate Republican Conference, write to express our outright opposition to a debt ceiling hike without real structural spending reform that reduces deficit spending and brings fiscal sanity back to Washington. It is the policy of the Senate Republican Conference that, quote, any increase in the debt ceiling must be accompanied by cuts in federal spending of an equal or greater amount as the debt ceiling increase or meaningful structural reform such as the Prevent Government Shutdown Act or the Full Faith and Credit Act. They say, we intend to stand by that policy. Our nation's fiscal policy, they say, is a disaster. Our country owes $31 trillion, just like I tell you when I talk about Goldco. a level of debt that now well exceeds the size of our economy. Inflation is making life more expensive for American families every single day. Meanwhile, your administration is directing federal agencies to continue to spend billions in taxpayer resources, expanding the size and the scope of the IRS to go after families and small businesses, policing the speech of Americans on social media, funding equity programs in the military, pouring money into programs for a pandemic that your administration has already declared over. Americans are keenly aware that their government is not only failing to work for them, but actively working against them. We do not intend to vote for a debt ceiling increase without structural reforms to address current and future fiscal realities, actually enforce the budget spending rules on the books, and manage out of control government policies. Sincerely, your friends, the Republicans from the Senate, Rand Paul, and others signing off on this. So that looks fun. We'll see if the White House does negotiate, if there's any compromise, or what will happen as this story unfolds. I hope you join us. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing wherever it is you're watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.